Hello everyone, and welcome back to Shadow Storyteller. If you enjoy unsettling tales that linger in your mind long after you've heard them, make sure to subscribe, tap the like button, and share your thoughts in the comments, so you won't miss any of our bedtime stories that might just keep you awake until dawn. Tonight's story takes us to the summer of 2019 in the English countryside. My name is Daniel Price, and I grew up in the quiet town of Shrewsbury, Shropshire. That year, the June heat wave was in full force, the air thick and dry, the nights strangely silent. My friends, Tom Hargrave, Lucy Bennett, and I decided to spend a long weekend camping deep in the Wyre Forest, a sprawling, ancient woodland that locals like to say has secrets it never gave up. We left on Friday morning, June 21st. The ground was still damp from earlier rain, releasing the earthy, sweet scent of wet soil as we walked. Sunlight spilled in patches through the high canopy, but the forest felt off. There was a stillness between the bird song and the rustle of leaves, a sense that something was waiting. By mid-afternoon, after weaving through overgrown deer trails, we saw it, something half hidden in a slope of moss and ferns. At first, it looked like a chunk of old stone, but Lucy pulled back the ivy and revealed a rusted metal hatch, the kind you might see in grainy black and white war footage. The surface was pitted, flaking, yet still solid. Tom tried the handle. It barely budged, groaning like an animal in pain. And the metal, despite the heat, was cold. We decided to pitch our tents a short distance away and return in the morning with better light. As the sun sank, the forest grew unnaturally quiet. The usual hum of insects faded and the wind died. By midnight, the only sound was our campfire crackling. Until the tapping began. It was faint at first, slow, irregular, metal on metal, coming from the direction of the hatch. Tom sat upright immediately, flashlight in hand. Lucy stirred, whispering my name. We didn't speak, but we all knew we were going to look. The tapping stopped the second we stepped into the beam of Tom's torch. The ivy glistened with moisture, the hatch dull and lifeless. Tom crouched, pressing his ear to the surface. I was about to tell him to stop when the sound returned. Not tapping this time, but something dragging. Something from the other side. Then the handle twitched. We froze, every muscle locked. Lucy's breathing grew shallow, and Tom slowly stepped back, his eyes fixed on that unmoving hatch. The dragging stopped. For a long moment, nothing happened. And then 3 loud knocks. Not random, not mechanical, deliberate. Somewhere in my gut, I knew. Whatever was inside that bunker was aware of us, and it wanted us to know it. The air around us felt heavier, colder, as if the forest itself was drawing closer, listening. Tom's hand tightened on the flashlight. Lucy clutched my sleeve, and I could hear my own heartbeat loud in my ears. I wish I could say we turned and walked away. But curiosity, it's a dangerous thing. So we reached for the handle, and that's when. The handle was stiff at first, refusing to move, but then, as if something inside had decided to let us in, it gave way with a slow, grinding creak. The smell that escaped was the first thing that made me want to step back. It wasn't just the damp, stale air of a place sealed for decades. It was metallic, sour, and faintly sweet, like rust mixed with something that had once been alive. We shone the flashlight into the darkness, but the beam was swallowed almost instantly, revealing nothing but a narrow concrete staircase that descended at least 20 feet. The steps were slick with moisture, each one coated in a thin layer of moss. The walls glistened as if sweating. "Maybe it's just an old bomb shelter," Tom whispered, though even he didn't sound convinced. Lucy's grip on my arm tightened. "It's freezing," she said, her breath visible in the light. She was right. Despite the warm night outside, a chill seeped from the opening, curling around our ankles like a living thing. We argued quietly for a moment. Common sense said we should close it and leave, but curiosity was gnawing at us. Finally, Tom went first, stepping carefully onto the slick stairs, his flashlight beam trembling slightly. I followed, with Lucy reluctantly bringing up the rear. The sound of our breathing echoed off the narrow walls. The deeper we went, the more the world above seemed to fade. The forest, the crickets, the rustle of leaves, it all disappeared, replaced by a damp, oppressive silence that pressed against our ears. At the bottom of the stairs, we found a heavy metal door, its surface covered in flaking green paint. On it, faint letters were still visible. Ministry of Defense Property. Tom hesitated, but the door was already ajar, the lock broken long ago. We stepped inside. The air was colder here, and the smell stronger. The room was rectangular, lined with steel shelves. Old crates, their labels faded to nothing, sat stacked in uneven piles. Dust coated everything, but there were tracks in it. Thin lines, as if something small had been dragged across the floor recently. Lucy noticed it first. "Look, those marks aren't old," she whispered. She was right. The dust around them was disturbed, fresh, and the lines led deeper into the bunker, toward a corridor that vanished into shadow. We followed. The corridor was narrow, with pipes running along the ceiling. The beam of Tom's torch wavered as we moved, revealing glimpses of peeling paint and rusted valves. Water dripped somewhere ahead, each drop echoing like a footstep. Halfway down, we passed a small room on the left. Inside was a rusted bed frame, the mattress long rotted away, and a desk littered with yellowed papers. I picked one up carefully. It was a maintenance log, dated April 1963. The last entry ended abruptly, as if whoever wrote it had been interrupted mid-sentence. Lucy urged us to keep moving, clearly unsettled, but Tom's curiosity pulled us forward. The corridor ended in another room, this one larger and stranger. The walls were lined with large circular vents, each one covered with a heavy grill. The floor was wet, the puddles reflecting the beam of the flashlight. In the center of the room sat a single metal chair. The straps on its arms and legs were still intact, though stiff with age. And there was something else, dark stains on the concrete beneath it, almost black in the dim light. "Let's go," Lucy said firmly. "I don't like this place." That was when we heard it again, the dragging sound. This time it was closer, coming from one of the vents. Tom swung the flashlight toward it. For a moment, we saw only the grill and the blackness beyond. Then something shifted inside. Something pale, smooth, and disturbingly fast. I felt my stomach turn. "What the hell was that?" I whispered, though my voice cracked. No one answered. We were frozen, our eyes locked on the vent. The pale shape moved again, retreating into the darkness, the sound of dragging following it. We backed away slowly, careful not to make a sound. But then another noise came, a metallic clang from the corridor we had just walked through. Something was between us and the exit. Tom killed the flashlight instantly, plunging us into pitch black. We stood still, barely breathing. The sound in the corridor grew louder. Not footsteps exactly, but an uneven, scraping movement. It came closer, slow and deliberate, as if whatever it was knew we were there and wanted us to hear it coming. I could feel Lucy trembling beside me. Tom's hand found my shoulder in the dark. Without speaking, we began to move sideways toward the far wall, trying to put distance between ourselves and the approaching sound. Then, out of the darkness, a faint glow appeared. At first, I thought it was a reflection, but it grew brighter. Two small, round lights low to the ground like eyes. They swayed slightly as they moved forward, accompanied by the relentless scrape of metal on concrete. Lucy let out a choked gasp, and the lights stopped instantly. For a few seconds, there was absolute silence. Then, without warning, the sound came at us faster, the glowing eyes surging forward. Tom flicked the flashlight back on, and in that split second, I saw enough to know I'd never forget it. The thing was crawling on all fours, its limbs long and thin, the skin stretched pale and almost translucent over bone. Its head was too large, the mouth too wide, and those glowing eyes were not eyes at all, but glass lenses strapped over deep, hollow sockets. We didn't wait. We bolted. The corridor was a blur of shadows and dripping water as we sprinted back toward the stairs. Behind us, the scraping sound echoed, faster now, chasing us through the dark. Lucy stumbled on the slick floor, and I grabbed her arm, hauling her forward. Tom reached the staircase first, practically leaping up the steps two at a time. I shoved Lucy ahead of me, my chest burning, my legs screaming with the effort. As we neared the top, the air grew warmer, the smell of damp earth replacing the sour rot of the bunker. Tom burst out into the forest, Lucy right behind him. I was just a step away when I felt something cold and hard clamp around my ankle. I kicked wildly, my heel connecting with something solid, and the grip loosened. I scrambled out, slamming the hatch shut with a ringing metallic thud. Tom and I threw our weight onto it, and Lucy found a heavy branch to wedge through the handle. We stood there, gasping, waiting for the sound of it forcing the hatch open. But nothing came. The forest was silent again, as if nothing had happened. For a long moment, none of us spoke. Then Tom muttered, "We need to leave. Now!" We didn't pack up the tents. We didn't even take the trail back. We just walked, no ran, through the forest until we saw the lights of the main road. Even now, I don't know what was in that bunker. Maybe something left behind, something that never should have been there to begin with. All I know is that we were not the first to find it, and I have the horrible feeling we won't be the last. Because sometimes, when the night is still and the air is heavy, I swear I can hear it again, 3 deliberate knocks, echoing from somewhere far below the ground. I didn't sleep properly for weeks after that night. Even back home, in the safety of my small terraced house in Shrewsbury, I found myself jolting awake in the early hours, heart pounding, convinced I had heard those 3 knocks again. Sometimes it was so faint I thought it might have been the pipes, or the wind against the old brickwork. Other times it was so sharp that I sat up in bed with my palms sweating, staring at the dark corner of my room, half expecting to see those glass lenses glinting back at me. Tom was the first to bring it up, though not in person. 2 days after we'd fled the forest, he sent a message in our group chat. "We need to talk about what we saw." I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, but nothing seemed like the right thing to say. Lucy didn't respond at all that day, or the next. When we finally met, at a small cafe near the station, it was awkward at first. None of us wanted to be the one to start describing it, because putting it into words would make it real. The clink of coffee cups and the hiss of the espresso machine felt strangely loud, like the world outside was mocking us with its normality. Tom leaned forward, lowering his voice. I went back. Lucy's eyes widened. You're joking. He shook his head. Not inside. Just to the clearing. The hatch was still there. Same branch wedged through the handle. But, he glanced around the cafe before finishing. The branch had been snapped. Something moved it from the inside. A cold wave rolled through me. So it's out, I whispered. He shook his head again, but he didn't look convinced. I didn't see anything, didn't hear anything, but the hatch was breathing. Lucy let out a sharp laugh, the kind people make when they're trying not to panic. Breathing? How can metal breathe? I don't know, Tom muttered, but I could feel it. The hatch was rising and falling, just slightly, like something big was pressing against it from below. For a moment, none of us spoke. My mind went back to the cold grip on my ankle, the dragging sound, the smell of that underground air. If it could move the handle, it could move the hatch. And if it could move the hatch, Lucy finally broke the silence. We should tell someone. The police, the Ministry of Defense, whoever's in charge of that land. And say what? Tom shot back. That we found a bunker in the middle of the woods and something tried to drag us inside? You think they'll believe us? I wanted to say yes, but I knew the answer. No one would believe us. And if they did, they might go down there unprepared and not come back. We agreed to leave it alone. Pretend it never happened. But pretending doesn't work when your dreams keep dragging you back to the same damp corridor, the same sound of metal scraping on concrete. By August, I'd stopped hearing from Tom. He ignored calls, didn't answer texts. Lucy said she hadn't spoken to him either. I told myself he'd just moved on, tried to forget. Then, one evening, my phone buzzed with a message from him. No words, just a short video. It was shaky, filmed in near darkness. The beam of his flashlight darted over ferns. Then the rusted curve of the hatch came into view. The branch was gone. The handle hung loose, swinging slightly as if it had been touched moments before. The camera moved closer, and that's when I saw it. The faintest glimmer of two pale circles behind the gap of the hatch. The light hit them, and they shifted, tilting toward the camera. The video cut off there. I called him immediately, but his number went straight to voicemail. I drove to his flat that night, but the curtains were drawn and his car wasn't outside. I didn't sleep at all. The next morning, Lucy called me in a voice that sounded thinner than I'd ever heard it. Tom's gone. Her words didn't make sense at first. She told me his landlord hadn't seen him in over a week. His phone was still on the kitchen counter, battery dead. There was no sign of struggle, but his boots were missing. I knew where he had gone. Lucy begged me not to go after him, but I couldn't leave it like that. I packed a flashlight, a crowbar, and a length of rope. This time, I didn't plan to run. The wire forest looked different in September. The air was cooler, the canopy thick with the last deep green of the year. But the stillness was the same, like the forest was waiting. I found the clearing easily. The hatch was wide open. The smell hit me first, worse than before. Rot, damp metal, and something sour that burned the back of my throat. I called Tom's name, my voice echoing down the stairs, but there was no reply. I tied the rope to a tree and looped it around my waist, telling myself I could climb back out if something happened. Then I started down. The air grew colder with each step. The beam of my flashlight found the first room, the crates, the same dust, but the tracks were fresher now, cutting deep into the grime. I followed them down the corridor, past the small room with the rotted bed. This time, the maintenance log was gone. The large chamber was as I remembered, but the metal chair in the center had been dragged to one side, leaving a streak across the wet floor. One of the grills was missing from the vents. The opening yawned like a wound in the wall. I heard it then, breathing, slow, steady, and deep, echoing from inside the vent. "Tom?" My voice cracked in the cold air. The breathing paused. Then, from the darkness, a voice answered. It was his voice. "Daniel, help me." I stepped closer before my brain caught up with my body. Something moved inside the vent, and for a moment, I saw his face. Pale, eyes wide, but wrong. His skin seemed stretched, his movements jerky, like a puppet pulled by too many strings. Then another face slid into view beside his. The same pale skin, the same glass lenses, and a mouth that smiled far too wide. I stumbled back, the rope tightening around my waist. My flashlight shook so badly the beam jumped across the walls. The breathing quickened, and the dragging sound started again. But this time it came from multiple directions. Something was in the corridor behind me. I didn't think, I just ran. The rope burned my hands as I climbed the stairs, and I heard them coming, scraping and clicking, faster and faster. I burst into the forest, gasping for air, and yanked the rope free. The hatch slammed shut behind me with a metallic ring, but I didn't wait to see if it would hold. I ran until my legs gave out, collapsing by the roadside where headlights finally found me. A driver pulled over, asked if I was hurt, but I couldn't answer. I just kept looking at the tree line, half expecting to see those glass lenses watching from the dark. I never saw Tom again. Lucy moved away the following winter. She doesn't answer my calls anymore, and I can't blame her. The police marked Tom as a missing person, but I didn't tell them what I saw. What could I say that wouldn't sound insane? It's been years now, but sometimes, when the night is still and the air feels heavy, I hear it again. 3 slow knocks, like a reminder. Not from beneath my floor. Not from outside my door. From somewhere much closer. The first time I heard the knocks from inside my own house, I was in the kitchen making tea. It was late, after midnight, the only light coming from the dull yellow bulb above the counter. The kettle had just started to whistle when I heard it. 3 distinct, heavy knocks. Slow, deliberate. I froze, the steam curling past my face, the cup trembling slightly in my hand. My first thought was that it came from the front door. I waited, heart thudding, listening for footsteps on the gravel outside. But the night beyond the window was still, the streetlights casting pale cones of light onto the empty road. Then it came again, 3 knocks, but this time, the sound was closer. Not from the front door at all. From the wall behind me. It was impossible. That wall backed onto my small garden. There was no one there. At least, there shouldn't have been. I set the cup down slowly, moving toward the back door. My hand hovered over the handle, but I didn't open it. Something about the rhythm of those knocks made my skin crawl. It wasn't just a sound. It was a signal. I forced myself to switch on the garden light. The dim glow spilled over the grass and the small shed at the back, revealing nothing unusual. The wind was absent. The air was heavy. Then I saw it. In the soft soil near the shed, there were marks, thin, parallel lines, as if something with long fingers had been dragging itself across the ground. The trail began at the far corner of the fence and ended directly beneath my kitchen wall. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the living room with all the lights on, the crowbar across my lap, every muscle tight with expectation. But nothing else happened. Over the next week, the signs began to appear more often. A faint scraping sound beneath the floorboards when the house was silent. Shadows shifting at the far end of the hallway when I was sure I was alone. My post arriving damp and smelling faintly of rust. By the third night, I started hearing the breathing again. Not from outside this time, but from inside the walls. I called Lucy. She picked up after the third ring, her voice guarded. I asked her directly if she had noticed anything strange since that day in the forest. There was a long pause before she answered. "You're hearing it too, aren't you?" I didn't reply, because she already knew the answer. She told me she'd moved to a flat in Bristol, far from the wire forest. But it hadn't helped. The first month, nothing happened. Then the knocks began. At first faint, then louder, until she swore she could hear them from inside her bedroom wardrobe. "Daniel," she said, her voice shaking, "it doesn't matter where we go. It's not the bunker anymore. It's us. It followed us out." I didn't want to believe it, but deep down, I knew she was right. 2 nights later, I got another message from her, sent at 3:11 in the morning. It was just one word: help. I called her immediately. No answer. I tried again and again until the line went to voicemail. I grabbed my keys and drove through the empty streets, the rain hammering against the windscreen, my hands gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles hurt. When I reached her building, the lobby was deserted. The lift took too long, so I sprinted up the stairs, my footsteps echoing through the stairwell. Her flat door was ajar. Inside, the lights were on, the kettle boiling in the kitchen. Her phone lay on the floor, the screen cracked. There were long, wet streaks across the laminate flooring, leading toward the bedroom. The bed was empty. The wardrobe door stood open. Inside, the streaks continued, straight to the back panel, where the wood was splintered and broken away. Beyond it was only darkness, deep and absolute. And somewhere in that darkness, I heard it. Breathing. I stepped back slowly, my pulse roaring in my ears. Then came the scraping sound. Close, so close I could feel the vibrations through the floor. I ran. I didn't stop until I was in my car, the building shrinking in my rear-view mirror. My chest hurt, my breath shallow, but I didn't care. That was the last time I saw anything of Lucy. The police found no trace of her, no sign of forced entry, no footprints. They marked her as missing, just like Tom. I started keeping the crowbar next to my bed. I left all the lights on every night. I stopped going out after dark. But none of it mattered. The knocks became part of my life. Sometimes days would pass without them, and I'd almost believe it was over. Then, just when I let my guard down, I'd hear them again. 3 slow beats against the walls, the floor, or sometimes the inside of the wardrobe. It escalated in winter. The air in my house began to smell faintly of damp concrete. I woke to find thin scratches along the skirting boards. My mirrors fogged up from the inside. And one night, I woke to the sound of my bedroom door creaking open. I stayed perfectly still, barely breathing, my eyes fixed on the dark gap widening in the doorway. There was no light, but I knew it was there. I could hear it moving across the carpet, slow, dragging steps. The mattress dipped at the foot of my bed. I gripped the crowbar so tightly my fingers ached. Then, just inches from my feet, came a sound I will never forget. "Daniel, help me." It was Lucy's voice. I wanted to believe it was really her. But the voice was wrong, stretched hollow, like someone speaking from the bottom of a well. I didn't move. I didn't speak. Then, from the darkness, two pale circles glinted faintly, catching what little light there was. They tilted, watching me. The thing began to crawl up the bed. I lashed out with the crowbar, the metal connecting with something that gave under the impact. It let out a sound that was almost human, a choked gasp before retreating. I heard it drop to the floor and drag itself away, the scraping fading into the walls. When morning came, the door was closed. The carpet bore two long, damp streaks leading to the skirting board. I've thought about leaving, about burning the house down and running as far as I can. But Lucy tried that. And she's gone. The truth is, I don't think there's anywhere to run. This thing, whatever it is, was trapped in that bunker for decades. We opened it. We let it out. And now, it's part of us. Sometimes I think about Tom and Lucy, about their voices coming from the dark. Were they calling for help? Or was it just the thing wearing their voices like a mask, trying to pull me closer? I don't know how much longer I can keep this up. The knocks are more frequent now. The breathing doesn't stop when I turn on the lights. Last night, I woke to find my wardrobe open again. And this time, the voice didn't say help me. It said, almost cheerfully, "Found you. Ask ChatGPT." That's where I'll leave you tonight, with the sound of those words still echoing in my ears. Found you. I don't know how much longer I can keep telling these stories before something finally steps out from the dark. But until then, I'll keep the lights on, keep the crowbar close, and keep talking, because maybe, just maybe, the telling keeps it at bay. If you've ever heard knocking where there shouldn't be any, or if something has ever followed you home from a place you shouldn't have gone, then you already know. Stay out of the woods. Stay away from the hatch. And whatever you do, never answer the knocks. This is Shadow Storyteller, signing off for tonight. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, and share your own strange encounters in the comments below, because you never know whose story I'll tell next. Sleep well, if you can.